Hamas is rejecting a plan to extend phase one of a ceasefire deal in Gaza. Now, the truce ran out on Saturday, and negotiations to enter phase two of the agreement, which calls for Israel's withdrawal from the enclave, had begun at the end of last week. This past Sunday, Israel, however, announced a truce extension, which they say has been proposed by the U.S.'s Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff. Hamas, meanwhile, says Israel is pushing things back to square one. For the latest, we can go across to correspondent Noga Tarnopolsky, standing by in Jerusalem. Good afternoon, Noga. Where exactly are we on this ceasefire? Are we in phase one or an extension? Where exactly are we?
We are suspended in quite a dangerous limbo, Delano, is what I would say. The original ceasefire agreement, which was cobbled together by both the Biden and the Trump administrations and came into being on January 19th, that called for a three-phase plan, and Israel signed on to that. Phase one began, as I said, in January, and as part of that deal, 2 weeks into it, negotiations were supposed to start on phase two, a much trickier phase for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as the framework of the plan said that in phase two, Hamas would have to release all of the remaining Israeli hostages, and Israel would have to withdraw to a perimeter around Gaza, and the end of the war would be declared. Netanyahu has an extremely right-wing nationalist cabinet and feels that he may not survive a cabinet vote on that sort of a decision. So Israel walked away from the talks. Since then, walked away from its commitment to abandon the Gaza-Egypt border, and now, as of the weekend, is blocking, again, causing a blockade of Gaza, blocking the entry of any humanitarian goods, of any medical supplies, simply blocking all access. Of course, this, in addition, is happened on the second day of Ramadan. So while there still are food stocks in Gaza from the 6-week period of the truce, it is seen by virtually every Arab country that has commented as a real slap in the face during this holiday period.
Noga, how are ordinary Israelis, digesting this sudden backpedal of the Israeli Prime Minister, given that we still have Israeli hostages who are in Gaza?
That's right. Israelis are digesting it very badly. As we speak, Delano, something that I believe has never happened in the history of Israel before is taking place. Families of soldiers killed in action in Gaza, killed in action in Lebanon, and families of hostages have been violently ejected from the visitors' gallery of the Knesset, where a debate had been called to discuss the establishment of a national commission of inquiry into October 7th and its aftermath, which Prime Minister Netanyahu has been blocking. There are extremely violent scenes inside the parliament building right now. There were pretty massive protests last night in Jerusalem, the night before in Tel Aviv. So while most Israelis don't have a clear understanding that Israel chose to violate an agreement that it itself signed, because they've never seen a text of that agreement, there is a widespread feeling among the Israeli public that the government is forsaking the remaining hostages and planning to return to war.
Noga, you spoke about a pressure mounting on Israel due to this blockade. We actually have a statement coming in from Israel's government saying Hamas has enough food to fuel an obesity epidemic in Gaza.
Yes, I mean, this is the tone of press releases of more and more governments during this time. But again, I have to say, even in my own ears, it sounds like that's less a proper government statement or an assessment of food stocks in Gaza than simply an attempt to insult the Muslim population, the Muslim Palestinian population during the holy month of Ramadan. It sounds like a childish statement. But however we look at it, and whatever the food stocks still are in Gaza for, let's say, the next week or so, the situation is that it appears the Israeli government is trying to withdraw already granted conditions, supplies, and access to Gaza, is trying to withdraw that so as to be able to use this as leverage to try and persuade Hamas to accept what it wants, which is the continuation of release of hostages illegally and violently held by Hamas in exchange for very little, because Israel does not want to declare an end to this war. That's the limbo we are suspended over.
It seems so. Noga, thank you very much for that, Noga. Tana Polsky reporting there for us from Jerusalem.